Okay, so hot cars kill. Who is this for? Well, if you're a parent of a young child, if you have a pet and take them with you anywhere from the vet or to your everyday comings and goings, and if you have a vehicle you use to get around with those children of pets. In the next 30 minutes, I'll provide information I wish I had 6 months ago in regards to hot car deaths. You will hear stories and statistics of why cars, kids, and pets can be harmed even though we love them so much, and I will describe how this will never happen to me did happen to me. This isn't going to be fun and happy information. Every year in America, there are on average 37 children deaths each year after being left in a car, says scientist who counts 729 such deaths overall since 1998. Hundreds of pets every year who are killed from heat exhaustion in vehicles, and I just hope that I can share what I've learned and keep a hot car death from happening by sharing my story. Statistics have shown that hundreds of pets and 30 to 40 children every year are killed in hot cars. And how could that many people leave their pets and kids in cars? Do they not love them like I love my children? Do they not care for their pets and have a love for them like I do? In 2015, I was asked to be a canine handler for the sheriff's office that I was working for. Our agency had secured a canine, and I was being trained to handle the dog. I heard of an officer in another state who had left his canine in his vehicle, and the dog had died of heat stroke or a hot car death. I remember saying to others that I was training with, how could he leave his dog, his partner, in the car to die? I could never do that. I was that guy. I said those things. I couldn't believe that guy had left his dog in his car. But does this sound like you? Busy at work or with kids, always rushing to and from obligation to obligation, stressing that there's too much to do and not near enough time to get it done. Life these days is busy. So busy that sometimes we feel like we're overwhelmed. I've been there. I know a lot of us have. And this is many of us. And it definitely was me in July of 2017. My name's Jason. I worked at a county sheriff's office for 10 years. I was a good cop, and I started in the jail when I first hired on. I was a member of the CERT team, which is the team that responds to incidents in the jail where tactics and force could be needed. Kind of like a SWAT team for the jail when inmates are unruly and won't follow, what they need to be doing and have to be, forcefully moved or dealt with. I was also a firearms instructor for 8 of my years at the sheriff's office. I was an inmate disciplinary hearing deputy as well as a deputy who began the jail work diversion program so that crimes not meeting a sentence of jail could be worked off through supervision of a deputy. I was a field training officer, trained to teach new recruits how to perform their job as well as teach them the ins and outs of the policies and procedures. I was a patrol deputy and a SWAT team member and the training coordinator for the SWAT team. I was also the canine handler and attended multiple trainings in regards to the canines and their deployment. I spent every chance I had to train and become a better cop, SWAT operator, and canine handler, which included 6 weeks in Indiana at the top canine training facility in the world. I attended trainings in recognizing drug users, habits and indicators, and other things that made me more efficient. I love my job and took it very seriously, but in all that training I attended, I never was trained to prevent any hot car deaths. I'd been made aware of canines dying in hot cars, but never taught and trained how to keep it from happening to me. Some of the statistics. If you had the air conditioner running, you drove into a parking lot, Found a spot, parked your car, and turned it off. You close the door and the time starts. In the first 10 minutes, the average rise is 19 degrees, which is quite a bit. On average, 37 children die from heat-related deaths after being trapped inside vehicles. Even the best of parents or caregivers can unknowingly leave a sleeping baby in a car, and the end result can be injury or even death. An average of 38 children have died in hot cars each year in the U.S. since 1998. Since 1998, 619 children have died in vehicles from heat stroke. That's way too many. More than 70% of heat stroke deaths occur in children younger than 2. Some of the science between how and why. I've read several of the, after reading several of the studies that have been done, doctors and scientists who perform the studies use huge words and a lot of terms that majority of the public, including me, doesn't understand. In layman terms, there's two kinds of memories: a habit memory and a perspective memory. And the habit memory wins, basically. Our flawed perspective memory puts those we love at risk. This is especially true when we assume that precautions are not necessary because such tragedies happen only to negligent parents. That's not the case. The evidence is clear that the assumption is wrong. There's in those perspective memories and habit memories, the perspective memory is, I need to take my child or my pet somewhere and drop them off before I go to work. And because our brains are tuned into our habits, every morning I get up, get in the truck, drive to work. Sometimes I won't be going to work at all. I'll be going to the store, a grocery store, and I'll turn to go to work because of my habit memory, and that's kind of how this happens. For example, new parents suffer from exhaustion due to lack of sleep, hormone changes, stress, and changes in their normal routine. Any of these changes can cause your memory to fail at a time you least expect it to. Even the best parents or caregivers can overlook a sleeping baby in a car, and the end result can be injury or even death. It's not always new parents. This can happen to almost anyone. Like I said, if you ever left home or work, headed somewhere where you don't normally drive and found yourself driving your routine, I have. Science is not wrong. Our minds can trick us if we're not careful. The new parent is only one example of ways we can allow our minds to let us forget someone or something we love. In many cases, this was taking on too many responsibilities or getting wrapped up and stressed out about getting many tasks completed within a time limit. And I know many of us function with these tasks and deadlines all of the time. If this is you, pay extra close attention because it was me. And this information, it's up to you to do with what you want. I hope you'll at least take a second look or think twice every time you have a child, pet, or any other living thing that could be affected by a hot car. And please don't let what happened to me and has happened to others happen to you. And why am I doing this? On July 3rd, 2017, I had just finished canine training with my police canine. I'd hurried home to go to a family event, and I broke my routine because I did not park in the place that I usually did. Parked in another spot so that my patrol truck was not visible while I went with family out of town for the day. I returned home nearly 12 hours later, and immediately when my canine did not greet me with his irregular bark, I knew I had made a huge mistake. And that mistake has impacted me and my family's life hugely. I contacted my supervisor and informed him of what had happened, and I was placed on leave. I eventually lost my job and was charged with aggravated cruelty to animals. Now, I'm not here to pass judgment on anyone who this has happened to. And I will say that I had in the past said about another policeman that this had happened to, that he was negligent, and that could never happen to me. Well, here I am, months later, and it did happen to me. I hope this information will keep this from happening to others. We love our children and our pets, and anyone who says otherwise has not had the opportunity to love. I sincerely hope that this information will help someone, if not everyone, that watches it, so it doesn't happen to them. Make checking part of your routine. Check your back seat. Tell friends and families and neighbors it could save a life. There's a lot of safety tips I'm going to talk about with child care providers, teachers, relatives, or anybody else who might care for your children or pets. Like, for example, use drive-through services when available. Restaurants, banks, pharmacies, dry cleaners, and pay for your gas at the pump. That way there's less chance of leaving a child or a pet in the vehicle. Be especially careful during busy times. Schedule changes in periods of crisis or holidays. This is when many tragedies occur. If you see a child alone in a vehicle, get involved. Most of us are going to do that anyway, but call 911 immediately. If the child seems hot or sick, get them out of the vehicle as quickly as possible. If you see a child alone in a vehicle, I already said that part. Never leave children alone or in and around cars, not even for a minute. Keep cars and remote openers out of reach of children. They can be locked in accidentally, Keep vehicles locked at all times, even in driveways or garages. Ask home visitors, child care providers, and neighbors to do the same. Make sure you have a strict policy in place with your child care provider about daycare drop-off. Everyone involved in the care of your child should always be aware of their whereabouts. If your child will not be attending daycare as is normally scheduled, it's the parent's responsibility to call and inform the child care provider. If your child doesn't show up as scheduled and they have not received a call from the parent, the child care provider will contact you, and that's something you need to set up before, and they'll contact you immediately to ensure the safety of the child. That's kind of a tricky thing to set up, but it could be really simple if it saves the death or harm of a child. It's kind of similar to the absence line used by most elementary, middle school, and high schools. Might be worth looking into. Another trick is to keep a large stuffed animal in the child's car seat. When the child is placed in the car seat, put the stuffed animal in the front passenger seat so that it's a visual reminder that the child's there. When you step out, you'll know that the child is there because there's a stuffed animal in your front seat. Put something that you'll need, like your cell phone, a handbag, your employee ID, or a briefcase in the back seat with the child, so that you have to open the back door to retrieve that item with the child or pet. And then look before you lock. Get in the habit of always opening the back door to check the back seat before leaving. Now, even new cars can't stop this from happening completely. The Hot Cars Act was passed in the House of Representatives as part of the Self-Drive Act of 2017. After its passage, Representative Tim Ryan stated no child should endure the tragedy of dying while trapped in a hot vehicle. The unfortunate reality is that even good, loving, and attentive parents can get distracted. Studies have shown that this can happen to anyone, anywhere. I'm proud that we are able to get this important language through the Energy and Commerce Committee and pass the full House. There isn't a congressional district in the country that is immune from these tragedies. This legislation will help mobilize inexpensive, readily available car rear seat technology to save children's lives. Representatives Schlowski, King, and myself will continue to press this issue. Our kids are worth it, said Congressman Tim Ryan. The auto industry knows we're human and can unfortunately forget one step in this busy and fast-paced society. They have kindly added reminders, so we put on our seatbelts to fill our low gas tank, so we don't leave our keys in the ignition, and don't forget to turn off our headlights. This alert will let us know, just in case, our quiet little passengers in the back seat aren't where they need to be, said Jeanette Fennell, president of KidsandCars.org. But hot cars legislation will prevent children from being needlessly killed and injured when unknowingly left in vehicles. The bipartisan effort has received widespread support from more than 20 of the nation's leading public health, consumer, and safety organizations, as well as experts in neuroscience and the brain memory system, and families who have lost a child or were seriously injured due to child vehicular heat stroke or hot cars. This language specifically would require the U.S. Department of Transportation to issue a final rule requiring vehicles to be equipped with an alarm system that alerts the driver to check the rear seat after the car is turned off. The last slide, we talked about new legislation being passed to prevent hot car deaths. My patrol car had some safeties that weren't quite enough. It had several safety precautions put in that helped me to be sure that my police canine was safe. If the canine was left in the truck and the truck got to a certain temperature, the truck would automatically roll down a window and turn on a window fan. And if the temperature continued to rise, it would kick on the siren and honk the horn to notify anyone around that the truck was too hot. The problem with this system was that it only worked if the truck was running. And finishing up, before I get to that, there's hundreds of things that we can do and we can try, but we're going to get busy. We're going to stay busy. And the Hot Car Act is a way to help keep our children safe. There are other things we can do. Some of the tricks before, might be something that we implement into our, routine so that, it lessens the chance of this happening. Studies show that when our routine is broken, we can forget our children or pets in our cars, resulting in tragedies or near tragedies. We can create a routine that will keep this from happening because of the usual routine. If the usual routine is broken, there will be another routine in place to protect ourselves from leaving the child or pet in harm's way. Make it a routine to open the back door of your car every time you park to be sure that no one is left behind. Even though you know nobody's there, if it's a routine, when there is a child or a pet that's not normally there, because of that new routine, we can remember them and keep them safe. Another safety trick is to put something in the back seat to remind you to open the door. Every time you park, things like your cell phone, employee bag, or handbag. We already talked about that, but to reiterate, maybe a new routine could stop this from happening. You can even keep stuffed animals in the baby's car seat. Place it on your front seat while a child is in the car to set a reminder that your child is in the back. These sound like things that a person with amnesia or someone that doesn't love and cherish their children or pets would have to do. But as studies and stories show, and take it from my first-hand experience, this really could happen to anyone. Some of this is a little bit redundant, but I've been there. I was that guy. I criticized and then became a statistic. And the last thing I want to see happen is that to anyone else. Keep your keys and remotes in places that children can't reach them or access them. We talked about that. But if a child goes missing, immediately check the trunk and the inside of all the vehicles in the area very carefully. As a police officer, I had the unfortunate opportunity to respond to lots and lots of missing children. As parents, we know all too well children like to get into things they're not supposed to, as well as go places that they shouldn't, and the car is one of those places that can be deadly if a playing child finds themselves caught playing or hiding. Like I said, as a police officer, I had the unfortunate opportunity to respond to lots and lots of missing children. One of those times, I arrived at a home of a missing child. We would search the home several times and by several different officers in search of the children, because more times than not, we would find that they had fallen asleep in an area not common to napping. I remember one small child we had searched for in the home. The home was neat and picked up, which isn't always the case. The home had been searched by 2 policemen before me, and another went in to double check. We found the child nestled down in a pile of blankets that had been removed from the bed to be washed. My point to this story is, after 10 years as a policeman, if I were to still work in that profession, I would start searching for children in vehicles instead of the home. To my knowledge, children can sleep in blankets for quite a while without being a danger to themselves, but a child or pet left in a vehicle is deadly. I'm not a professional presenter, which is probably obvious at this point, and there are most likely mistakes in this presentation. I'm sure there's way more information, different studies, and most likely better ways to share this, but at this point, I'm just a guy that made a mistake, and I hope to share this so nobody else makes the same mistake that I did. Please try to imagine what it would be like. Show empathy. I've had the opportunity after my canine's death to be judged by those who know me as well as those who did not. I lost my job. I lost 10 years of hard work. I lost many friends and relationships, and most of all, I lost my friend and my partner. I love animals, and I cannot even begin to imagine the grief and loss of a child. The crazy thing is, and I'll bet if you spoke to many of the parents that this happened to, I would lose it all again if I could have my partner and friend back. People don't understand what it means to have this happen to you, and no matter what you lose, in addition to a child or pet, it rarely compares to the loss of that loved one. I hope by preparing this small webinar and video, it could prevent at least one hot car death. And please, 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 show empathy and kindness to those who this has happened to, and has happened to, and may happen to. I promise that all the things that were said to me, as mean and bad as they were nothing to the things that I had put myself through. We as people need to show love and support to those who have made mistakes. They need nothing more at that time than somebody to say, I understand how this could happen, and I'm sorry. To finish this, I want to thank those who stood by me and those who this has happened to. Thanks for your support, love, and understanding, and I hope I can be that person for someone someday. But more importantly, I hope that never happens to anyone.